Tantôt, on a demandé à nos deux conférencières un commentaire de nature plus éditoriale, 10-15 minutes maximum, à savoir si elles regardent dans leur boule de cristal, c'est quoi leur avis, l'avenir de la philanthropie sur la scène internationale. Donc, quelle forme, quelle place, quel rôle est appelé à jouer la philanthropie dans les différents pays, dont Canada. Donc, pour commencer, on va inverser les rôles. Donc, ce sera Mme Susan Phillips qui va commencer. Ms. Phillips?
Merci, Vincent. Probably all ready for a nap after such a large lunch. How do we try to pull together all of the dimensions, all of the issues, the challenges that are out there around philanthropy? In the concluding chapter of the book, we tried to do that by taking lessons from Uber. Using Uber, depending if you think of it as a taxi service or a ride-sharing app, as a metaphor, what does Uber teach us about some of the potential lessons and applications of the challenges of philanthropy? I should say I don't offer this as an endorsement of Uber, although I love it, and I give my apologies to any of you who are taxi drivers. So what are the lessons from Uber? Why does Uber work in a way that we might take some of those lessons for philanthropy? Uber came on the scene. It took a well-established, somewhat protected and insulated industry by storm, radically disrupted it and changed it in a very short period of time. First of all, because it paid attention to its users. I like Uber because I don't have to dig through my handbag to try to find my wallet to pay. I know when it's going to arrive and all of those things. The lesson for philanthropy is that in this world of transparency, of impact, of differently segmented donors who may be giving for different reasons, the question that was raised earlier about the boomers and will they actually turn some of their money to philanthropy, is that as foundations, as fundraisers, as nonprofits and charities, we need to pay much more attention to what our customers, our users are telling us. Are we meeting their needs, whether we're asking them for money or whether we're providing services? And the pressures to really pay attention to memberships, to constituencies, to know that we are connected in an accountable way to those we serve, I would suggest will become stronger. And it's part of the accountability agenda, but it's part of sorting out who's effective and who isn't. The second lesson from Uber is that it paid attention to its suppliers. Lots of drivers, even taxi drivers, like to drive for Uber because they can drive when they want, when they're more likely to make money, set their own hours, and is paying attention to who are the suppliers. And I think philanthropy needs to do more of that as well. And we need to think of our suppliers as part of a supply chain, in the sense of there are many different parts. I alluded to advisors, wealth advisors, philanthropic advisors earlier, that are part of that supply chain of philanthropy, but we often don't utilize them, don't bring them into the supply chain fully enough. This is a repeat message. Uber is about data. It knows where every car, every passenger is at any time, and which has had a great ability to predict demand, to be in the right place, and to make messages about safety. And there are many cities where taxi drivers wouldn't have gone into certain areas, but because of the tracking and the ability, they are now willing to do so. So I will be a kind of metaphorical broken record on this, but transparency, using data well, and impact are critically important. Learning for improvement. The reason we want data and metrics is so we can do things better. And how do we build those loops for continuous improvement? I think that the standards program that Imagine Canada's run is one of the most important things that the sector has done for itself in many years. And it's done it well, Imagine Canada's done it well, and its supporters, because it has positioned the standards program as a way of continuous learning and improvement, as opposed to just having a seal or a stamp of good conduct. So how do we learn much more effectively within our own organizations and across organizations? Uber is both famously competitive, fiercely so, but it's also collaborative, often with those that are not the usual suspects. In many cities, Uber now delivers meals from upscale restaurants. It collaborated in several cities with animal rescue shelters to bring puppies to downtown workers at lunchtime so they could have a little lunch break and play with a puppy, while getting a strong message about adoption of a rescue animal is a very good thing to do. The lesson is that we are in an era in which collaboration will be essential. And sometimes increasingly we need to look beyond those that are in our immediate circle, the organizations we've always worked with, or the organizations that do what we do, to find those that are bring us the strength of weak ties, those that are doing different things, but working together, we can achieve something quite different. So think puppies. Uber also was very careful where it entered the market. It knew in some cities it would get a terrible reaction, and it stayed away from those markets and went into the cities where it was easier to do so. And as philanthropy expands, we increasingly need to know our market. How do we reach out to that broader base who aren't, and declining base who aren't participating that Kathy talked about? How do we engage the millennials that may have quite different ways of engaging than the boomers did? How do we actually get the boomers to volunteer and to look at where their legacy goes? And Uber, of course, taught us that public policy can be enormously resistant to change, that it was outlawed in many places, that it was not warmly welcomed. We are at a time in the next couple of years where we have some real opportunities in Canada specifically. As we celebrate the 150th anniversary of the country, there's lots of questions being asked about what kind of country do we want, and philanthropy being part of that. The federal government, which is the primary regulatory function de facto through the Income Tax Act, has signaled it wants a modern framework for charity. What does that mean? And now is the time for the sector together to step up and offer very concrete suggestions about what the sector needs, what that means, how do we build the capacity, the enhanced professionalization, the right public policy, the right regulatory systems that we need. And there is a lesson in international experience from this. If we look at the regulators around the world, most of them have come into severe difficulty, at least the established ones in recent years. The IRS in the US went through an enormous political scandal. The Charity Commission, which has always been the model regulator in the UK, had half of its budget cut. The question is it fit for purpose? Can it continue as a modern regulator? And we've made lots of criticism of our own, but we at least are not in bad shape in that regard. But it is an opportunity, I would suggest, over the next year and a half to really look at how we build the right public policy, because we have a little window. And when we have a little window, what we want to do is pry it open so it's a much bigger opening that we can jump through. The last thing I want to point out about challenges is around leadership and what that means as we go forward in philanthropy and the nonprofit sector. These are data that come from the Ontario Nonprofit Network. And what they show are the age of the leaders, these are mainly CEOs, working in nonprofits in Ontario. And it's quite a good sample. What we see is that 33% are 55 to 64. Another 8% are already over 65. You look at well over half, maybe as much as 60%, say, in 5 years, I'm gone. If you ask how they've developed talent pool, it's quite a different story. Quite a serious story. 66% have given no thought at all to succession planning. A smaller percentage said they didn't know, which I assume means if you don't know, you didn't do it. And only a very small percentage have thought about how they're going to bring along the next leadership. And the ability to develop their high flyers, their rising stars from within or attract otherwise. I would think that's a coming crunch that we need to pay attention to. And the kinds of skills that the people say they need, the existing leaders say they need, and they're lacking, measuring and demonstrating outcomes around how to be more entrepreneurial, using technology, how to engage with donors, working with the private sector, using social finance tools, and engaging in shared services and thinking about mergers and amalgamation. All the things we've talked about this morning. Skills that they know are needed are not there, and when the current leadership leaves, it may be very different picture in many of our organizations, which will raise real questions about our capacity to take some of these challenges forward. So as we move forward into discussion, I welcome your thoughts on this. Thank you.